Hi guys, am I live? Yeah, I think I'm live. I hope you guys can hear me. Hi, good morning. I'm doing morning motivations today, and today's theme is book of the day. And I had a couple of books that I thought about talking with you guys about. A lot of them were art books. I have one particular book which is about three really famous Indian painters, which I thought might have been interesting. Um, I also had a book about installation within light and sculpture spaces. Again, quite art and contemporary art based books. But then I found To Reach the Clouds, and then I thought, because this is morning motivation and my main aim in the next 20 minutes is to motivate you, that this is a really, really, really amazing book to talk about. It's an amazing, just amazing feat that one person, along with the help of so many other people, managed to accomplish. Um, and before I start telling you about it, and before I start telling you about Philip Petit, who is the guy in this picture, I just wanted to talk about how I came to get this book. Um, so I feel like because I was born in India and I lived there for most of my life. Most of all of my stuff is in India, and when I moved to England, it took me about 2 years to get a lot of my stuff to England. A lot of that was books, but the problem is books like really um, they add up with your weight going back and forth. So I had to be very selective about the books that I could bring to England. And over the last 4.5 years, a lot of the books that I have are books that I've had my whole life, or books that my parents have had and then given to me. But they're also books that people have given me, and each book is kind of is quite special. It's kind of like how you talk about food as something that can take you back to a certain moment in time, and can make you relive a memory so vividly. For me, in many ways, along with food, um, I feel like books do that, and they remind me of the people that give them to me. And when I read them, I think of those people. Um, and so this book was given to me by my friend for my birthday, and she is very, very crazy about books. She reads a lot, and she once told me that there's nothing worse than giving someone a really good book that you wish you could read again for the first time. And I thought that was just a really interesting thing to think about, because once you read something, I guess you have to wait quite a while before you can forget what it is. But you never really truly read something for the first time ever again. So and I obviously had heard about Philip Petit, because I'm assuming many people have. But for those of you that don't know who he is, um, he's basically a French man who tightrope walks across buildings, um, and he is most famously known for creating an unauthorized line across the Twin Towers as they were being built, um, and then walking across it. I think it was 8 times, and at one point he actually lay down in the middle of it. He managed to bring most of the New York traffic underneath to a standstill, which is quite amazing. So he's most famously known for this, and I knew about him. There's also a really famous documentary called Man on the Wire, which, if you read this book, it's really interesting to then watch the documentary, because it gives you a different insight. Well, not a different insight, but it kind of compounds the insight, because this is written by Philippe, and it's written in first person, whereas and with the documentary you really get a sense of just the action. And there was also a really famous film made in 2015, and I can't remember what it's called, but I'll link it. So I knew about the existence of this whole event, but I hadn't actually read the book till my friend gave it to me for my birthday. Um, and the first thing it says in right at the beginning is that there's a note from Werner Herzog. Uh, I'm gonna have a geek moment for a second, but Werner Herzog is like amazing. I'm a huge fan of him. He's a filmmaker. Um, he's a huge documentary filmmaker as well. Um, and I love him, and it just felt so right to open this book and to see this forward um, by him, which basically says, one more thing, Philippe, you are not a coward. So what I want to hear from you is the ecstatic truth about the Twin Towers. And this is really amazing as well because I really love this book because the idea of the ecstatic truth is this huge kind of thing that Herzog uses within his work, um, and it's all about fact and truth and the idea of documentation and whether just picking up. So there's a certain strand of filmmaking where to pick up a camera and to just film, you you are just basically documenting that moment. But this whole idea of ecstatic truth is is a poetic truth. It's something that's more mysterious and more elusive, and you only reach it through the fabrication of like your imagination and by creating a certain, a story within it. And yeah, it's definitely about your perspective of the truth. So he says to talk about this experience in that way with the ecstatic truth. And when you read this book as well, the style of how Philippe writes, because obviously, the Twin Towers, they don't exist anymore. And in fact, there is one picture in this book because it's a mix of his whole experience from when he thought of this idea to do the stunt, all the way till after he did it and what happened after. And it was thoroughly, thoroughly documented. And there's this one photo, and I'll show you some other photos as well. There is this one photo that genuinely makes you kind of just scream on the inside, considering the history of the Twin Towers. And obviously, this day is 1974, so it's almost 20 years before anything happened. But it's quite premonitive. But funnily enough, he does not at all really talk about what happened to it, which I think a lot of books to do with the Twin Towers, or even though it's about something that's happened quite in the past, will always stress on what happened to them. But he doesn't. And what's really, really interesting is that he talks in first person, but he talks in the present tense, even though he's writing a book about something that's happened almost 35 years before, because he released this book around the mid 2000s, I think. He talks in first person, he talks in present tense, and this use of present tense really just makes you feel like you're there, like this is actually happening, that this is something. It's almost like you're watching a movie, because he also his language is just really it it's really fun, and it's quite short, and it's quite catchy, and it draws you in, and it just really punches apart, and it makes you feel like you're there, you're experiencing it. So to kind of start from the beginning, he was kind of, if you wanted to know a bit more about him, he was kind of a recluse. He didn't really, it's not that he didn't really fit in, it's that he chose very, very consciously that he did not want to fit in. His father was a pilot, and he decided that he was just basically going to be a rebel poet and a rebel juggler. And he got kicked out of school. He'd been expelled so many, many times. He was just, in a way, he was a deviant, but in a very honest way. He was just being who he wanted to be, and I, in a way, really respect that, because I feel like human beings aren't really made like this anymore, and society has kind of made us go from society's kind of made us start running this race from the moment we're born, because there's like a certain set of things we have to do and a certain way that we have to do them. and he just rejected that and said, I'm just going to live my life the way I want to live my life. And he did, and he's really smart. He just, like, in the conventional way, didn't you know get the schooling, and didn't go to uni, and didn't do the conventional things. But just because he didn't have that certification didn't mean that he wasn't a really smart, interesting, intellectual person. So these are some pictures of him as a kid. I think there's one as well of him juggling. Oh no, he was a magician at one point as well, I think. Um, and he came across this idea when he went to the dentist for a toothache. Obviously, he's from Paris. He was born in Paris. He went to a dentist in Paris in 1968, and he was in the waiting room, and he saw this article in a newspaper, and it's basically it was basically talking about the twin towers being built, and he really describes it really nicely. About, in true French fashion, they put the Eiffel Tower so that you could kind of gauge how much taller. So it's 100 meters taller than the Eiffel Tower. And as soon as he saw this, he thought to himself, he really wanted this picture. So he sneezed, and as he sneezed, he tore the paper out of the magazine, and he put it into a little box, which was projects. Now, his first kind of tightrope experience, of illegal tightrope experience, was in June 26th, 1971. That was when he walked across the Notre Dame in Paris, and that was 223 feet above ground, which is about 68 meters. And that was really his first kind of, he rigged the line and he walked across. But the French police didn't really like it, and he didn't get a very great response. So he went to Australia, where he kind of did his second big one in 1973, across the Sydney Harbour Bridge. And then he came back to Paris, but he was still quite obsessed with this idea of walking across the Twin Towers. And he went to America. I think it was around, I can't really remember, to be honest. It was around the late end of 1974, so after he came back from Australia, spent some time in Paris, and then went to America. And then, over the next, I think, 4 months, he scoped the Twin Towers. He constantly went. It was totally illegal what he was doing, but it's amazing to read about it. It's amazing to read his kind of obsessive passion. Again, something I feel like we forget to have obsessive passion. We forget that we should just be passionate about things, about doing something, not to achieve fame or glory or money, but really just to achieve something that we're passionate about. Is a personal goal, or it's just something you're obsessively passionate about. I just feel like maybe this is a good time to be obsessively passionate about something. And he was, and you read about it, and I was reading a bit yesterday about it, and it's just the way that he talks about it, and there's quite some funny stories leading up to it, as he scopes, obviously both towers, north and south. He goes up, he acts like he's a builder, he acts like he works there, all sorts of scenarios, gets caught a couple of times. At one point, he even steps on a nail, which is on a plank, which goes straight through his foot, which is not great because he kind of needs, his feet and balance to be able to do the walks. He has to recover. And then the main issue is, okay, well, how are we going to get the rope across from one tower to the other? And so in the end, what happens is, I might be spoiling the story, but in the end, what happens is they basically they shoot an arrow from a bow from one side from the south tower to the north tower, and it's the most interesting thing to read. And you sometimes wonder if it's really just fiction, if he's just making it up, because surely this didn't happen. Surely they didn't, you know, plan this whole thing. And the way he talks about the plan, it almost sounds like they're about to rob a bank. And it is almost, if not more elaborate than what I would imagine robbing a bank is like. And in the book as well, because it's documented really, really well, there's some really interesting photographs, but there's also some really interesting some drawings that he's done. Like, sorry, I'm just going to show you this. Ooh. So when he goes to America, the first time he goes, this is kind of how his first visit to the Twin Towers. He drew that. He's also a really good artist. And then these are kind of like his drawings. Oh, I really want to show you specifically. So these were his drawings for the rope, for the bow and the arrow, basically. So there's a lot of, build up as he's going to do it. There's a lot of problems that happen as they're trying to rig it. And there's this huge argument he has with his friend about whether they should do it at night time or whether they should do it in the morning, which they continue to have for almost 24 hours. And now I just wanted to show you some pictures of him doing it. It's just amazing. Like, obviously in that photo you don't really get a sense of how far away from the ground it is, and you need to think about it's 411 meters above the ground. It's 110 floors above the ground, to the point where sometimes you couldn't see the top, because if a low fog would come through, you just wouldn't see the top. So this is a really interesting picture. You see, he's taking there's a picture of his friends on the street looking up, and that's him all the way up there, that tiny dot. That's him. And as you're reading this, and I was reading this yesterday, I had goosebumps thinking about it and reading it, just because I felt like I was experiencing it. And even though I know he's going to be fine, so that's him as well again, it's just kind of scary to look at him doing it. And he's going to survive. You know the end to the story, but the build-up of him doing it, and just look at that. He's just so tiny, and the way he describes it is just really amazing. So I was reading that. Oh, and this is really dramatic as well. So that's when he lay down in the middle, just as an extra touch to the whole event. So yeah, overall I think he walked back and forth 8 times, and then he lay down, and it was about 45 minutes that he did it back and forth. And when it ended, he got arrested on, and instead of taking him to the police, the first thing they did was they took him to a psychiatric hospital to test his insanity, whether he was insane or not. And then he got taken to jail, and he got charged on disorderly conduct and trespassing. But it was totally dismissed because he became this huge kind of almost celebrity figure and was propositioned by a lot of companies to do all sorts of things. But he never really took it up. It's quite simple in many ways. And again, it's about that, obsessive passion that I really admire, and it just it motivated me last night when I was reading it. And I would really, really recommend getting the book. It's not very expensive. It's definitely worth having, especially for the photographs. It's a real piece of history. It's documented really well. It's written really interestingly. And then watch the documentary, because I've heard from my friend who gave me the book that it goes really well hand in hand. So yeah, I thought I would have run out of time talking about one book, but he just did something really amazing, I think, and I genuinely can't describe the goosebumps I had last night, and my heart was in my throat. Even though I knew the end, I was just thinking, oh my god, don't fall. I could feel him being, so far up the ground. It was amazing. So for a book, I think, often film can do that, but when a book can just totally, mesmerize you and take you to a different space, a different time, and make you forget about everything around you. I think it's just a really amazing experience, and it's the whole purpose of fiction, and this is non-fiction as well, but it's the whole purpose of art and creativity in books, really. And yeah, so I hope that kind of motivated you to be passionately obsessed with something, or to go read this book, or if you're not much of a reader, just to read it just for the pictures, or watch the film. Look it up definitely, and I hope you found that interesting and slightly motivational. But yeah, I hope you have a good day today, and I hope everyone is feeling safe and well and is staying inside and just feeling a bit positive today. So, anyway, see you. Have a good day. Bye.